Hi, I'm Nick Termini, and this is the Business Spotlight brought to you by Action Coach in North Kansas City. Today, we're here with Jason. Hello, Jason, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Nick. Glad to be here and excited to be on your show.
Awesome. Well, could you please tell us a little bit about your company and your journey once you started it?
Yeah, so my name is Jason Roske. I own the KC Auction and Appraisal Company. I started that about 18 years ago now. My son is 20, so that's kind of my benchmark. We moved back here when he was under a year old, and I started this company about a year after that. So,
Okay.
Born out of, I used to buy and sell antiques. I had an antique shop here in Waldo in the area, and I used to travel the country doing antique shows and sold online, and realized there was a big void in the Kansas City market at that time of people who had partial estates and full estates of things that they needed to sell. There just weren't a lot of good options here locally. There was a guy down in Gardner who was getting ready to retire, out in areas like that. But if you're in Kansas City, you don't want to drive 40 miles to go sell your items. So I started looking into being an auctioneer. I started looking into what that really entailed and looked like. And 18 years later, I own a company that has been voted best of Kansas City 7 of 9 years, and the best auction house in Missouri 3 of the last 4 years. So it's been a long process to get here, but it's been a fun process nonetheless.
That's awesome. And so, what led you to this industry?
Well, when I was a kid, my mom drugged my brother and I to garage sales, and we could either sit in the hot car and bake for an hour or two on Thursday or Friday mornings, or we can go in and try and get her to buy us something, whether it was a toy or a book or just something to kill the time. And so I started buying stuff, and it was introduced to the secondhand market that way early on. I mean, before I could probably even really understand what was going on. And so buying things secondhand was very, part of my nature, thrift stores and antique shops and estate sales and things like that, and garage sales. And then I had another business that failed, as most entrepreneurs have at least one or a dozen in their closet that they may or may not talk about very often. But I had a business that failed, and I had a bunch of stuff that I bought, and I started selling it to try and stave off the repo man on my truck. Lost the truck, lost the business, but I did learn that there's a huge market of people who were buying and selling things, and it looked like some of them were making good money at it. So I just started doing that, and that's kind of what I did. I started doing, there was flea markets here in Kansas City down at the Governor's Building at Kemper, which a lot of younger people have no idea what I'm even talking about. But it was down in the West Bottoms. It's now that sports center, the Hy-Vee Arena.
Yeah.
Used to be Kemper, and they used to have flea markets once or twice a month from different promoters, and would set up down there and got to know the industry really, really well, and kind of grew from that.
Jason, you brought up an interesting point early. So, our company works with business owners to continue to grow as a leader and also grow their business. And you brought up, failures that you've had, and then look at where you are now. Could you talk about what the process was and how you continue to grow and overcome those type of circumstances to get to where you are now?
Absolutely, because it's such a huge part. I mean, I don't know the numbers are anymore because I've been doing this long enough, but at one point it was something like 80% of all businesses fail in the first 5 years.
Yeah.
And which will always be true. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And the reason, and how I got through it is I drank a lot. No, I'm just kidding. When I watched one of your other episodes and you talked about, business and things like that, I've been really, really fortunate and blessed. I've got an incredible wife. Who's always had a steady job. If you're in business, you have your business, and then a lot of times you have a job, the real work. My wife has always had that steady job, and so I don't want to say I never worried about where food was coming from, where it was coming from, but I always had that safety net. I always had that support system too. My wife, even when times were bad, we had conversations. Don't get me wrong, like it was not always peaches and roses, but she understood what I was trying to do and why I was doing it. And she saw that there was success in that, or could be. We started doing estate sales for people because, again, that conversation of there wasn't an opportunity for them. And most people, when they're downsizing or a relative has passed on or things like that, they don't have a full house full of stuff to sell. They have a few odds and ends here and there. And we really looked at how could we take these little packages, combine them together, make a package that was big enough to draw in crowds to buy it, and also bring in enough revenue to pay us and our employees and marketing and all those other things enough to make it worthwhile. But really, as far as surviving those businesses that fail, and most do, having a good support system and understanding that as much as your business is you, it is not defining you, and you are much more than what you present in a business setting. But it's still really, really hard. Like when I remember I closed my antique shop, it was really, really challenging because it's something that I dreamt I'd worked towards at that point. It's one thing I wanted, that stability, that place that people recognized as mine. And when I closed, it was tough. It was challenging, but you like anything else. When the Chiefs lose a football game, and hopefully they don't lose this Sunday or tomorrow, Saturday, but when the Chiefs lose a football game, they go back to the locker room and they analyze what they did wrong and what went wrong and what they could do better for the next game. The same thing holds true for business. And even a business that doesn't fail has failures regularly. If you're not failing at things in a business, you're not doing enough things in a business, right? So that's something that I sit down and look at what I've done regularly. Just got done looking at our end of year numbers, and I look at things on a sometimes daily, weekly. When something goes wrong, I recognize it going wrong. I immediately sit down and try and figure out, what did I do? What could I have done differently? How could I address the situation going forward? And hopefully that mistake doesn't happen. And what you find is the mistakes that you make early on in your career, in your business, you make them less often and they have less impact because you've done things to mitigate what could be the problem there. And so that's just analyzing what you've done is the biggest thing in having a strong support system.
Jason, you brought up a lot of great things, and my wife has been incredible as I've been an entrepreneur, and having that support system is critical because a lot of times they're able to see things in you that you lose sight of as you get rocking and rolling in a down minute, right? And the other thing is, so at Action Coach in North Kansas City, we're putting together a membership program to create community for business owners. And a big reason for that is exactly what you're talking about, is to help entrepreneurs not feel alone. And part of what you've said there in having a support system is exactly that. You've got to have people that can encourage you, but also, it's being an entrepreneur is a lonely spot. But like you said, this is common. A lot of people go through these types of, and I don't even want to call them failures. It's just they don't get to where they thought they could, and they let the mistakes or loneliness or whatever it is beat them up. And so hearing your story is incredible.
The other thing I'd add to that, Nick, and your group sounds interesting, and I'll definitely look into it. I'm also a member of the Waldo Brookside Rotary Club. Yeah. And that's like an old-fashioned club, right? Rotary's been around for over 100 years, but it's a really great place to expand your network. True bottom line business, you expand your network if you're active at all in these kinds of clubs, but you also have that opportunity to experience other people's successes and other people's failures, and they get to experience yours. And a good group like that, whether it's your church or a Rotary or Kiwanis type group, or your Action Coach group, it's so important to be able to understand, like you said, that you're not alone. It is a lonely field. Like, I have employees, I have customers, I have clients, I have thousands of customers and clients all over the country. I can't talk to any of them. Amy, who's worked for me for almost day one, she's one of my best friends, but there's certain things that I could never talk to her about, and I shouldn't be able to, right? She's an employee. She has her own life. I try to be very cognizant of those boundaries of after 5 o'clock, 4:30, whatever. We close our day at 4:30 generally. That unless there's something really important or a conversation that needs to be had, that I don't bother her on her own time, even though there's things I'm interested in about her. So having those groups of people outside of what you have to have really does lighten your load on your shoulders.
Absolutely. So back to your current business, Jason, could you tell us a great success story that you've had, and like what it is that when you work with clients, the type of experience that you create for them?
Sure. So one of the things that sets us apart, I think, is our ability to recognize things in a home that may have value that others might not see. And I actually have a couple of props here I'll get to in a second to kind of illustrate that. But you know, when people have lived their lives, and you know, I met with a couple yesterday who've been married probably 45, 50 years. They're getting ready to downsize again here in the coming future. So then we come into the house and walk through and say what was valuable, what wasn't. And some things that they thought had a lot of value didn't. Other things they didn't think had value did. And that's always the case. And one of the things that sets us apart is being able to recognize at a real quick glance what is and isn't valuable. And things might be valuable and not worth anything. It might be worth a lot of money on paper, but when you go to sell it, there's not a market for it, right? And so I got a couple things here. Like we do a lot of work with silver. You know, almost everybody got silver when they got married back in the, up to the 1970s and 80s, right? It was a really popular gift, and so people would get things like these, right? You've got a couple of silver little cream pitchers that are from larger sets, right? They're from coffee services or teapot.
Those look familiar, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. One of these is worth about $10. One of these is worth about 150 to 200. I know immediately what that is, why that is. But
okay, wait, Jason. Which one's which? Because I'm looking at them and I think it's the one with all the decorative.
You think it's this one?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, most people would. So let's start with this one. And this actually is one of those things that on paper is worth a lot of money. So this is made by a company called Wallace Silver Company, but this is actually silver plate. It's in the Baroque pattern. That's all this guga on there. This pattern is called Baroque. It was one of the most popular patterns. They also sold this in a grand Baroque line where this same piece would be sterling silver. And so this piece, if you went to replace, let's say you were using for Thanksgiving and this fell and got a big dent in the side of it and you really wanted a new cream pitcher. If you went to replacements.com, you're probably going to spend $100 on this piece, but they'll have 5 of them in inventory, and their inventory is larger than Arrowhead Stadium times 3.
Really?
Right? Oh yeah, it's pallet racking that's 7 pallets high, and it's 3 football fields in like square footage.
Okay.
Because the last time I looked at the numbers, and that was 7 years ago.
Okay.
So they have millions of pieces in stock. So if you want this tomorrow, you can go there and order it and get it tomorrow. Like right now doing work on our bathroom, I needed a piece today that I ordered tomorrow. I paid the extra money to have it today because my contractor is there putting that in place. So that's worth a lot, but won't sell for much because it's silver plate and there's a lot of them out there. Okay. But if you need it, you'll pay a premium for it. This one is sterling silver. And so just the intrinsic value of the metal, right? It's a commodity. So there's about 7 troy ounces of silver here. So this one is worth about $150 at auction, compared to 10 or 20 at auction for this one. And so we're really good at recognizing that. We sell a lot of jewelry as well. And so I brought a couple of rings in here. Make sure I know which ones I'm looking at. Cover up the tag so you can't cheat that way. but one of these is diamonds and gold, and one of these is costume, right? So how do we know that? Well, we know really well. We've sold a lot of jewelry over the years, and they're not showing up as well because they're small. But this one, which looks really a lot fancier, is costume, and it's worth $10 or $20. This one's got a 1 carat marquee cut diamond in it with a 1/2 carat of baguettes around it. It's 14 karat gold, and she's wearing between $700 and $1,000. But if somebody brings us a box of jewelry, we need to be able to tell which ones might be worth more, and then we bring in, a third party on jewelry, especially to look at the quality of the stones and if they're diamonds or if they're cubic zirconia or if they're another clear combination like glass. It could be all kinds of different things, right?
Yeah.
But we do in-house. We have a lot of experience, and then on things like that, one of the things that really sets us apart in that field is we work with a local gemologist who used to work for Tibble and Company. And Tracy Cayley's now on her own. It's Cayley Appraisals. And we contract with her. She looks at all the pieces that we have questions about, that our clients have questions about, and she tells us what they are. She says it's a 1 carat marquee cut, IJ, I2, cut, color, clarity, all that kind of good stuff. Yeah. So when we present it to the marketplace, our bidders and buyers know that, they had a third party tell them that that's what this is.
Yeah.
And so they feel much more confident and comfortable bidding with us. And so our prices for jewelry are amongst the best, if not the best, in the region. And I've talked to auctioneers around the country, and they're like, well, you're getting prices we can't get in New York and LA, because we've spent so much time cultivating those relationships with our buyers, but that's because we spent so much time cultivating a relationship with a third-party expert that we pay to have look at the pieces that we sell.
Jason, that's incredible. And I mean, I think it's quite obvious how your expertise comes into play, because, you know, I don't think everybody realizes what they have. And
right.
How would they even be able to access this type of information? So, you know, that's incredible that you provide this type of resource to the community.
Well, yeah, and we do it, you know, for clients. We also, before the pandemic, we did a project with KCPT, public television here in town.
Oh, awesome.
And everybody knows Antiques Roadshow. We do a local version of that with the station that raises a lot of money for KCPT. We would put together 15 to 20 different appraisers with different expertises, and people would, you know, pledge to the station and get tickets to go do that. So I do events for historical societies, retirement communities, where we go in and say, you know, bring us your objects. We'll tell you what we think they are and give you an idea. So it really is. And shows like Antiques Roadshow are great, but they only tell a small portion of that story. And there's so much that comes in. They have, they will see 3,000 people in a day, and they have 20 of them get on air. And the vast majority of people have things like the silver plate creamer, as opposed to the sterling one, that have nominal value, but they have huge importance in the family. They have huge interest just because they remember where they got it, or they got it as a wedding gift, right? But monetarily, it may or may not have value. So yeah, it's the fun part of our job. But it can also be the most challenging, because when people have in their head that it's artwork is another one, like, you know, we sell a couple thousand paintings a year, and then prints and sculpture. A lot of people don't know understand the difference between a painting and a print, or the different types of prints that are out there, and why this one's worth $5,000 and this one's worth $50. So a lot of our job is to educate our clients, potential clients, and then also educate our buyers and potential buyers so that they feel confident and comfortable in bidding on what they're buying.
Well, Jason, that brings up a great point. So, and you know, with our business, what we do is work, you know, education is ongoing with leaders of companies and owners of companies. And, you know, so what is it you've done to continue to educate yourself and grow as a business owner? I mean, you shared some of the turbulent times, but what have you done to continue to grow to get to where you are now?
Absolutely. So I've always been different. So most auctioneers in the estate world work Saturdays and Sundays. They have an auction at the house, and their weekends are spent doing that and cleaning up from that. I didn't want to do that. My wife and I moved back here from the DC area when our son was 10 months old. I didn't want to lose all my weekends to estate auctions. And so we opened up an auction house in the West Bottoms and had auctions every other Tuesday night. Now, I lost time during the week, but I'm a night owl anyway. So me working until 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning was not an issue for me, and it freed up my weekends. But the business changed, right? And I realized, it's almost 10 years ago now, that it was just as possible to sell the revenue that we were doing online versus an in-person auction gallery. And so I started looking at that option, and then I actually bought our first commercial building to move our auction gallery into on the West Bottoms. We found a great old place that the guy was selling on Craigslist because he didn't want to pay a broker his commissions. At heart, I'm a picker, right? I buy and sell. I've always done it, right? So I picked a building. I bought this huge building for no money compared to what it was really worth. It needed a lot of work, but because he never listed it anywhere, so nobody knew it was for sale. I just happened to find it on Craigslist, and I sent it to my broker at the time. He said, I don't know anything about this building. So we figured it out and got it bought, and planned to be there for 20 or 30 years, and I had a plan in place to grow the business there and use the space. And then immediately, this is about 10, 11 years ago now. As soon as the paperwork hit the county offices, it's public knowledge, and I had people stopping the next day. Do you want to sell the building?
Oh yeah.
Because it was 22,000 square feet above ground, a full basement, and a great big rooftop. And so it just had a lot of potential. Kept telling people no. And finally, this one guy said, just give me a tour of the building. I want to see it. He loved it. He asked me to sell. No, he would stop by every few weeks, come every once. And the best question I've ever heard was a question that Mike posed to me. He said, Jason, I know it's not for sale, but if it was for sale, how much would it be? Right? If you change it from a yes, no, you can't dismiss the question. And so I said, well, let me think about it. I went home and talked to my wife, and we said, well, we don't want to sell it, but if he hit this number, it would be foolish for us not to, right?
Yeah.
He hit the number, and so it was foolish not to. So we sold the building, and we had a lease back and all that kind of thing. And it was at that moment that I realized I have an opportunity to really change the business to where I think it can continue to grow and continue to be successful. And again, make it so that my personal life is easier. My business is successful is a lifestyle business. I like living my life. I work hard, but there are things I want to do on my own, right? So like, what if we went online only at this point? We could cut our staffing. We need a space that's much smaller. And so we found an old house on Quality Hill that was a beautiful Victorian home. And we worked there for many years that we just went online only. And having that small space for us helped us grow the business because we could say no to so many of the clients that we used to have to say yes to.
Yeah.
And we could say, I don't have space to work on this, so I really cannot fulfill my obligations to you. You're going to be best served somewhere else. And so we were able to really drive down into what we wanted to sell, who we wanted to sell for, and why. And because of that, we were able to really kind of take on this different trajectory. Whereas before we would sell kind of everything. The kitchen sink was not uncommon, really. We would do, somebody do renovation on the house, they'd bring us the late fixtures and the things that could be resold, and we would sell them. And now we're able to focus on art and jewelry and silver and antiques and estate items, sports collectibles, whatever it might be that's interesting to me and my staff, that we can promote much differently and do that. So all of that to say, we realized that the auction industry was changing, and we're still auctioneers, but really we're a marketing company that uses online auction platforms to discover the value of the objects we're selling. And so I started studying how to market the auctions online, and whether that's Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever platforms you use. There's online calendars for this kind of for auctions and estate sales. And I've become so good at it that the National Auctioneers Association helped me rewrite their curriculum that they teach other auctioneers. Okay. They have a designation called Auction Marketing and Management that I helped rewrite that curriculum a couple of years ago, just before the pandemic hit. And I've taught on the subjects across the country. So
well, and Jason, you just brought up a topic that I was going to ask about. How has your business evolved in your industry since the pandemic?
Sure. So my business honestly hasn't changed that much. We were already online only. Yeah. We became much more aware of our numbers. When I say that, so our auctions are online for about 2 weeks, a lot like eBay. So if you're familiar with eBay auctions, that's kind of how online auctions are still. There's a lot of similarities, but we're able to monitor the numbers in the back end. And that, what I mean by that is how many lot views do we have? How many registered bidders? How many bids have been placed up to that point on the lots and on the auction cumulatively? And so we became much more aware of those numbers because we had clients who were extremely concerned about selling anything at that point in time because, the world was crumbling. It felt so dire there for a couple of months. And I compiled this huge database of information and went to our big client at the time and said, here's what I know historically. If on day 3 we're not at these numbers, if day 5 we're not at these numbers, we can talk about what that looks like as far as your auction and returns and results. But I'm seeing people across the country sell with great success, and I think we're going to do similarly because of what's happening. Everybody's at home. But we were already online only. We had just implemented, literally in November the year before, scheduling pickups so that our customers Like let's say we have auctions that sell anything from one item. It might be a car or a very specific collection of things, up to 500 lots of random things. So if we have an auction that's 500 lots, that might be 1,000 pieces or more than that, right? We would have 150 to 200 invoices. So that's 200 customers. Some of those would be shipped out. We would have 100, 150 people coming to our office to pick things up. So we're like, how can we make that better? How can we make our customer experience better?
Yeah.
Well, because some colleagues of ours around the country were using Sign Up Genius to schedule pickups. And a lot of my colleagues thought it was crazy. Just it's worthless. It's a waste of time. And I was like, let's try it. Well, it made our customer experience 1,000 times better.
Yeah.
Because they're not, they would come at 1 o'clock and their things would be ready. They'd load in their car. We might talk for a few minutes, but there was no waiting. Before sometimes we'd have 10 people show up at one time. That 10th person might be there for an hour waiting to get their stuff because we have to go through this. We have to find these things and put it all together because we don't know when they're coming in. So we were already doing things that the pandemic made possible or made crucial to our competition before the pandemic. So in honesty, the pandemic hurt us in that it brought our competition much closer to where we are. A lot of my auction colleagues who were doing live auctions, in-person auctions, couldn't do them. So they had to sell things somehow. So like, I got to try this online stuff. Well, they realized that it's better in a lot of ways. It's worse in other ways, but by and large, if you know how to do it, it can be very, very successful for you. So I have more competition now.
Well, Jason, so in the business spotlight, what we're doing is sharing stories of other business owners, right? And if you could go back, and you did a great job of telling what it was like in the beginning, turbulent times. But if you could just give a message or words of wisdom to entrepreneurs that are just getting started, or that are in a growth pattern where they're struggling, what is something that you would want to convey to them?
Yeah, and I think we touched on this a little bit before, Nick, but I think having a strong support structure in place, whether that's a wife, husband, spouse, partner, family member. My brother and I talked quite a bit. He's, as I'm sure most siblings know, he's the person in the world who I love the most and hate the most at the same time. But he'll tell me straight, more than anybody else will, because you can't get away from that person, right?
Yeah.
So have people that you can really get not just positive feedback. I hate when I see people post something on Facebook and everybody says it's a great idea, and I know it's going to fail in 3 months, right? The worst thing you can do to somebody is give them BS hope and support. It does nobody any good. It just drives them further down the road. Like Mr. Wonderful in the Shark Tank, take it behind the shed and kill it. It's dead. It's not going to work without these things in place.
So an acronym we have at Action Coach is nice. Nothing inside of me cares enough.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, so it's exactly what you're saying. You're looking for that unreasonable friend who's going to be honest with you no matter what, because they love you, not for any other reason. Yeah,
and that in and of itself, I've seen people fail because they don't have that.
Yeah,
because they keep hearing the fake niceties of, oh, it's a great idea, you'll do wonderful. And then 3 months later, that person who was all supportive is gone. They're not offering any support, any help, direction. So having somebody you can count on to be straight with you is so important. It will save you decades of pain and strife. But then just be patient, right? My very first auction in our auction gallery in the West Bottoms, I sold $1,800 worth of stuff to 23 people. And I knew that, like I was expecting it, and it should have been $5,000 to $10,000. I mean, it was a small deal, but it brought a third of what it should have brought normally, because I didn't have a customer base at the time. So the patience to understand that your business will grow or can grow, but it's not going to happen overnight. An overnight success, 20 years in the making is so often the case, right?
Yeah.
That just understand that patience is really a virtue, and understand that you might have successes right away. They may or may not continue. So when you have a great high, oftentimes it's followed by a great low, because you get caught up in yourself, which I've done that too. I've had incredible success auctions. I'm like, oh, this is easy, I don't have to do anything. And then I look up 8 months later, like, wait a minute, where'd all that money go? Where'd all that, that free press go? And where'd all that, great things were riding for a while go, and then you got to churn again. So it's better to keep consistent, not care about the highs or the lows. Celebrate them, learn from them, but don't get completely wrapped up in them. I think is a huge thing to keep in mind as a young business owner.
That's awesome. And so Jason, in closing, is there one last message you'd like to convey about your company to our viewers?
Yeah, so the KC Auction and Appraisal Company has been around in this iteration for about 10 years. We started 18 years ago, and we continue to strive to provide our clients with the best responses and results we can for them, while also working to make sure our customers are confident and comfortable in bidding with us, and that their experience is as good as it can be. If you have questions about antiques, estates, jewelry, silver, art, all those kinds of interesting things that you read about or hear about in the newspaper, Elvis Presley's plane just sold for $220,000 and it was a shell of a thing. It sold at auction. The best things in the world sell at auction. And there's a reason for that, because a good auctioneer will get you publicity, not just locally and regionally, but across the country and world. And we've done that many, many times, depending upon what we're selling. And so if you have questions about any of that, please reach out to me. And again, if your Action Coach product sounds amazing, but if you're watching this and have questions about business, I'm always there. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there, a Facebook page, and Instagram are the two social medias that we use for our business a lot. But yeah, on LinkedIn, Jason Roske, KC Auction Company, you'll find me. I'm the only one. Reach out to me there and I'll be happy to answer questions that you have too.
Awesome. Well, Jason, thank you for being on with us, and really appreciate you telling your story and offering up the words of wisdom from your experiences.
Absolutely, Nick. Thanks for having me on. Good luck to Action Coach and what you guys are doing there. It sounds like a neat project, and I look forward to hearing more about it.